Morning, Pamela.
Good afternoon, Maria, to you.
Did you like the new intro to our workshops?
Absolutely loved it. Very nice.
It's great work, and we should thank marketing. Thank you, marketing. I know you're behind the scenes.
Thank you,
So
marketing.
yeah, well done. So it is inspiring, isn't it? We start with such a good mood.
Very exciting. Yes,
Yeah.
all the ISO codes that we work with and how powerful they all are for organizations.
This is the third cycle this year so far. So the new intro comes in just on time to start our new series of workshops with it. And today we have 9001. Next week we'll have 14,001. Then 45,001, and we'll finish the cycle with a 27,001 session. And as usual, let's tell people that the mics and cameras are disabled, basically because we need to ensure good connection. I had to switch off my background basically a second ago, as you know, to ensure that we can hear each other. So from time to time, connections may not work too well, but everyone can ask questions and let us know what they think, makes any comments, etc., via the social media chat boxes, sorry, on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook as well. So we'll have a Q&A session, and Pamela's favorite part, the consultancy sessions that you may like. Guys, to book with us, talk to us, and let us know what you think about ISOs, what you need, what needs you might have, etc. So Pamela and I will be happy to talk to you privately as part of our free consultancy projects we offer to our attendees. Right, Pamela?
Absolutely. We love hearing from people, questions, just how this would work within their organization, the benefits, all of that. We love to hear from anybody around the world.
Absolutely. And this is because the ISO standards are truly international. The standards elaborated by the ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, which is an independent body, a non-governmental body, internationally recognized with 166 members at the moment, state members at the moment, many technical committees, over 20,000 standards. Most of those are technical standards, but we'll be talking about the ones companies and organizations worldwide use to manage their systems, their management systems efficiently. And today we'll be talking 9001. Before we get started, let's just go through some benefits from ISO compliant management systems altogether. So, what do we achieve as organizations if we operate ISO compliant management systems? We truly achieve consistency, systematic approach. We reduce costs by operating management systems. We do help our strategic planning. We manage our risks. We manage our supply chain, which is truly essential. It's fundamental nowadays. And we give our interested parties further support, and we, most importantly, elevate our reputation. Why? Because ISO standards, once again, are internationally recognized standards, and the ISO management system standards, on top of that, can be independently certified. And here's Pamela to tell us, to share with us some stories with regards to how she helps organizations with approaching the ISO implementation?
Yes, Maria. I have found when I'm working with customers, when I'm approaching customers, or they come to me through referrals or whatnot, that ISO 9001 for quality management system, it's becoming more relevant for businesses today than even last year or the year before or even 5 years ago. And the reason for that is the supply chain is one huge area, is being able to manage what happens to your product after it leaves your warehouse. And then once it gets to your distributors, then what happens? But being able to have ISO 9001 in place, you're able to manage that process at the highest international accepted level, to where nothing is really going to fall through the cracks like it would or could without having this in place. Because you will tell your distribution centers or your distributors or anyone that handles your product after it leaves your warehouse exactly what the standard of quality is going to be that they're going to be using when handling your product. And by having ISO 9001, that ISO 9001 certification stamp on your website, it levels you up above your competitors. It I always say that there's business that you're losing that you don't know that you're losing by not having it on your website. So those are just a couple of things that I've experienced when I'm talking to people, organizations, especially when it comes to their supply chains. Because right now, if you are listening to the news or reading anything, even internationally and here in the United States, supply chain and supply chains, plural, are of the utmost concern right now.
Absolutely. Thank you for this introduction to the ISO 9001's purpose, Pamela. Exactly. The standard comprises the company's policies, the company's procedures, if there are any, all the requirements that can ensure your customer requirements are met, are fulfilled, and your customers are happy, consistently happy, which opens new sales opportunities for you. And ISO standards can be used, can be implemented and certified in any organization. So any kind, any size of organizations, either product or service based, and ensures continual improvement of your system. So it's a very good thing to have, basically because it validates your capability to deliver according to customers' expectations and exceed those expectations in a very, very difficult moment of time. So, this said, how does the standard work? Actually, the standard, as any other ISO management system standards work with the PDCA, or so-called dynamic cycle, consisting in planning what we have to do, doing it, checking what we have done, and acting upon A. Any deviations from what we've planned to do or check, and B. Any opportunities for improvement. So, if we find any of those, we act in a planned matter, do what we've planned for, check again, and so on, until we achieve this continual improvement. Nowadays, we quite like to represent the dynamic cycle with a fifth element in the middle, which is leadership. Why? Because leadership, top management, is essential to the system. ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, when reviewing years ago the standard, came up with this great idea, which is fundamentally essential, that unless top management is involved, The system may just remain on paper when it is meant to work and generate money for your business. So we very much like to represent it, as I say, in the middle of this cycle uh, as an essential concept for you not to forget the role of top management in your ISO implementations. Pamela, how involved your customers are?
I have found there are many reasons why an organization would want to be ISO 9001 certified. One that I've recently experienced, just real recently, with a client that came on board was they got stuck. They supplied product to one of their customers, and their customers decided not to pay for products that they've received until the client that I got on board, until they got ISO certified. And so that is something that and that was an overseas client, but that is something, and it does happen. I had another client had that happen here in the States that, that's one of the reasons why, you would want to put this in place before that happens, especially if you ship product overseas. And so literally, the client that I just brought on board was in a rush to get the 9001 certification because they wanted to get paid for product that they already had delivered to somebody, one of their clients. So that's something that a company does not want to be faced with, because that was a very large invoice that they're waiting to get payment on.
Absolutely. And the contractual requirements have become maybe the essential reason for organizations to go with ISO certifications, as well as elevating their image, their reputation. Why? Because ISO systems go well beyond what is legally required and help organization show the third parties that they actually uh, work beyond strictly legal and do use best practice worldwide known. This is what ISO standards represent. They are sets of good practice, and once an organization decides to to implement those, well, they get them certified, and the whole world would know that this organization works based on upon best practice.
Absolutely, Maria. And I always tell somebody who I'm talking to is it's the highest level of internationally recognized quality and quality system that you could have in place for an organization or a company. Highest level, highest international level, recognized internationally.
Absolutely, and there's so many reasons to audit. We have enumerated couple of three of them, but many organizations find their own reason and go ahead. Why? Because ISO systems actually work. So if you get paid for what you do and your customers are happy with you, actually it means it works, doesn't it? Again, ISO standards help organizations show conformity to the customer's requirement. They help organizations meet regulatory requirements. They help comply with contractual requirements, and they also help us raise our reputation. Tell people, tell other organizations, tell customers that we are trustworthy. We do what we say, and we say what we do. Okay, then, so many organizations sometimes get slightly concerned when the magic word auditing is mentioned.
That's so true.
That's so true. Indeed. Now, we'd like just to walk you through the 7 auditing principles, just to reassure organizations that although a very serious and complex thing, ISO auditing is actually an activity designed to find evidence of your compliance or conformity with the standard. It's an activity designed to support your company, not to disturb your company. Basically, while auditing, third party and internal auditors should do so. Third party auditors look for conformity rather than non-conformity. Let's make a comparison to financial auditing. When we have financial auditing, auditors do go to and try to find every single discrepancy, and that's a non-conformity. During ISO standards, auditors ask many questions. Why? Because by doing this, they try to find evidence of your conformity first. So, auditors must apply the following principles, the ones you see on the screen, by default, because this is what we are meant to do. We must be impartial. We must represent our finding in a fair way. We must remain confidential. We must not disturb our customers' operations. We base what we report on evidence, and we use so-called risk-based approach as well when auditing. So again, auditing a system is a very serious thing. However, it is meant to help organization identify potential weaknesses and get them resolved rather than disturb organizations and somehow penalize them for doing the right thing, which is operating a compliant ISO management system. Pamela, how do your customers feel after their first certification?
They feel very accomplished and confident. I have heard remarks from after they finish the prod certification and the implementation, all of that, and that their employees took their jobs more seriously. That there was job descriptions that were definitely finite, whereas before the certification, some people didn't really have a really good job description. And so therefore they didn't take their job as seriously. But this gets everybody on the same page of what they're to do, how well they can do it, and also being able to understand the importance of having this ISO 9001 quality management system in place and adhering to it. So it's like a new way of doing business once you're ISO certified for 9001, and it's at a higher level of quality. And that's why it's quality management because and when you're producing a higher level of quality, not only in your management, but also in your products, it reflects in everybody's attitude and confidence level in themselves, in their job, and also in the organization in which they work for.
Absolutely, and we still like to produce manuals, quality manuals for our customers, because those manuals, they're not those big documents years ago the ISO asked for. Now a manual can be as short as 15 pages, but this is a reference to what an organization actually does and how it does it. So, in the UK at least, many organizations use the quality management manuals as part of the induction material, and employees grasped it very quickly, because if you can in 15 to 20 pages actually read what what is being done, how it is being done, who's who, etc., etc., it's very, very easy for new employees to get all quickly oriented and know what they're expected to do. That's so much easier, and it saves so much in time and money in training people. So we have prepared a tiny audit scenario for you, just to see if to test our knowledge on ISO 9001. Pamela, may I ask you a favor, please? Can you read it for me, just and for our attendees?
Absolutely.
Thank
So
you.
in this audit scenario number 1, it's an internal audit. In the final inspection and shipping area, we examine records for order 1234. This is related to the XYZ item that is pending shipment to a customer. We observe the note all correct alongside the initials JC. The supervisor tells us that JC is one of the junior inspectors. We also ask the supervisor who has authorized the shipment. The supervisor responds that authorization is not necessary for this type of routine product, and the records show that the inspection was satisfactory. The supervisor informs us that in case of problems, the signature of David Manvers, the chief inspector, is requested, but only if modifications to the product are required. So we check the organization's documented information on the shipment process and see that the chief inspector is responsible for authorizing the final shipment of all products.
Okay, so we're internal auditors. Someone has invited us to audit that department. We work for the same company, but not for that department, which explain why we have been invited to be internal auditors. And what should we do? Nothing. According to what we see, it's all good. We should recommend an action to improve the communication, because it seems that he says one thing, the other says another thing. So we are opinionated people, and we suggest something needs to be done. We contact management and inquire why this apparent miscommunication has happened. We investigate further on our own, or we just document a non-conformity because it all look wrong. So, well, we've been working during this session on 7 auditing principles, haven't we? So we've seen that we need to be impartial, independent. So I hope no one is going to suggest that we should recommend any actions or contact management, basically because it wouldn't be an act of independent activity. So we have to think if it is all good or there's something wrong and what we should do. Okay, if we're not quite sure, let's say we're not very well experienced, it's our first internal audit, we may don't feel very well that particular day, we have our doubts, and we don't know whether it is good or not. We always have our safe net, which is called further investigation. If you guys don't know what to do, how to do it, please go and look for further details. The standard is so flexible that at some point you'll see very clearly if there is a non-conformity or actually everything around makes sense. If everything around makes sense, that's okay. It's all good. But if there is a non-conformity, please believe me, you'll find it. You'll see it clearly after looking hard at it. So, in this particular case, investigating further is a correct answer. There is another one which is even better, and that would be document a non-conformity. But there is a catch, because there are 2 capital sins in auditing. First capital sin, in auditing is filing a non-conformity where there is none. This is why we always suggest to investigate further if you are not sure. Now, the second capital sin in auditing is actually filing a non-conformity without knowing why. This is as bad as the first one. So if you file a non-conformity, even if there is non-conformity, unless you know why, that wouldn't be valid. So in any case, if you have doubts, investigate further. And now I'm going to tell you why here we have a non-conformity. For a very simple reason. I already mentioned that ISO systems consist in doing what we say and saying what we do and doing what we say. So far, so good. So here we have a clear deviation from what we say and what we do. We say that the chief inspector is responsible for authorizing the final shipment of all products, but we actually do something different. We ask for minor changes to be handled by another non-senior supervisor. So there is a mismatch between what we say and what we do. When there is a mismatch between what we say and what we do, we have non-conformity. Have I explained it okay, Pamela?
Absolutely. You're doing a great job, Maria. Um, a few other benefits that somebody might not be thinking of or realizing with ISO 9001 certification. Um, when somebody's looking to do business with somebody, like to contract with, contract manufacture, or to private label their products, they do look for, and I can tell you most of the time from what I hear, they do look for ISO certification of 9001, that stamp on a website, because that actually shows that for them, they'll have less RMA numbers having to be produced for return merchandise authorizations. And that's for returned product because it was not of the standard of the highest level of quality. So being able to look for that ISO 9001 certification stamp on a website, it does give a level. And I know for owning my own business for 19 years prior to coming on board with IMSM, is that when you're looking for somebody to do business with, you only want to do business with quality people and quality companies, quality individuals, companies, all of that, because you know that with your name, quality will be associated with it. So that's why I always say you don't know that by not having this ISO 9001 certification stamp on your website, you don't know the business that you're losing because they never contacted you. So that is one of the things that I stress in a conversation with a prospect that's considering this is you
Yeah,
don't know the business that you're not getting, and you will never know. But
absolutely. Yeah. Mhm.
yeah, but with Harvard studies, Maria, we know that they've proven for every $1 that a company or organization spends in this category, they've proven that they see a minimum of a $6 to a $16 return on investment to that $1. So
Yeah.
just with that, they make money.
Absolutely. This is basically your first point about not being able to evaluate the impact of not having it. It's quite an issue in the States. Here in Europe, basically, we can do it because, more or less, because both public and private tenders require ISO standards to be implemented and certified to bid for those tenders.
Yeah.
And we have lots of public and private tenders in the EU and in the UK. So companies can clearly see the number of tenders they can't even bid for. So if they don't have the certification, their documentation is not accepted.
Wow.
Yeah.
So important.
Very important. So in the US, it's hidden because you don't have that many tenders clearly requiring ISO. So uh, you can't actually make an estimation on how much you can't bid for.
That's correct.
Yeah. But we've seen that there are quite a lot of sectors already requiring some kind of ISO certification. Let's say that the 27000 series is a mandatory element in the financial sector in the US. So, uh, based on this observation, we are quite confident in considering that in the next couple of years, ISO standards will be explicitly requested by customers, and then organizations will be able to make some more accurate calculations on how much they haven't been able to bid for.
Absolutely. That's so important.
So let's have another scenario, very quick, and see if we've learned something else in here. Pamela, can you please read it out loud for me?
Sure, absolutely. So the
Thank
audit
you.
scenario number 2 for an internal audit, we're auditing the design and development process in our organization. Our company designs and manufactures industrial equipment. The department currently works to resolve a customer complaint related to faulty security mechanisms. Engineers have been dispatched to the customer's home to repair some equipment that was designed, manufactured, and supplied 2 years earlier for the contract number A123. We found a recent note in the archive stating that the engineers are currently having difficulty repairing the equipment. The latest equipment design has been provided, serial number X123, revision 3. The technical drawing does not contain the modification to the safety mechanism that was made before the delivery installation of the equipment. We confirmed with the department manager that revision 3 is the current version of the drawing and that revision 3 does not include the modification of the safety mechanism. He asked why the modification of the safety mechanism was not incorporated into the drawing, and he replied that the change was reviewed and considered insignificant and without impact on the equipment. He also did not differ from the specifications of the client's contract. Eek.
That's a completely real case.
Oh my goodness.
It has been anonymized. It's years old now, so we can bring it up. We're not saying who
Good.
which is the company with such a waste of engineering time. You can imagine 3 engineers in there not being able to repair the the installation. So the customer furious, apparently. So it's kind of complicated because it looks like it's all okay from a document point of view. It works. The customer, however, is not happy. The work hasn't been done either. So we're not considering it as a good thing. So there is something quite wrong. But is there any non-conformity? And if there is any, why we should consider it as a non-conformity? So again, we don't recommend anything. We don't complain to management because we are auditors. We need to reflect what happens and explain it plainly, clearly to the customer in order to understand it. So, what's wrong in here? There is a non-conformity. Well, there has been a change, and the change has been evaluated, but its importance has been discarded as relevant to the system. So there is something quite failing in how we evaluate the impact of our changes. There is a clause in the standard which explains how changes must be handled in order this situation never to occur. So changes are very important. They need to be managed efficiently, and the standard helps us a lot. Why? Because, when we have major changes, it's kind of obvious that we should assess those changes, and we can easily see potential risks and opportunities. But we have routine changes, small changes. Sometimes we forget how important they may become, and we are not looking too deeply into the potential risks. So here for example, from a something considered to be quite not an important change, we got quite an important situation with the customer. So the standard helps us with change management as well as many other management elements. Pamela, have you had any customer with such a blatant non-conformity, engineering non-conformity? Hopefully not.
I actually haven't. That's why when I read that, I was like, ah. But I actually did have a friend that owned a company that manufactured product that did not include specific care instructions that needed to. And when the product went into the dryer, it caught fire.
No
And
way.
that was a problem. And yeah, they took care of that. They ended up getting, ISO certification, everything 9001, but that was a significant problem. Yeah, but
Brilliant.
they could have prevented that by having that in place prior to.
Yeah, indeed, it's very important. I think that we might have received some questions. Let's inquire marketing if there are any questions. Caroline, have we received any questions from our attendees today?
I do see one, and it's ISO 9001 certification mandatory. And how can I get certified? How long does the certificate last for? No, do you want me to answer them, Maria?
Well, I can take the first one if you like
Oh, yeah.
about the mandatory
Yes.
application. Well, this is quite a question. I suspect that that particular attendee may be working with European companies
Uh,
because, yeah, we get this one very much in Europe. As I've mentioned, public and private tenders do require ISO certifications, and organizations get slightly mistaken. They think that uh, these certifications are mandatory by default. No, they're not. The ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, doesn't require, uh, doesn't say that ISO standards must be implemented. Organizations do not have this obligation. We say it's an independent body, it's a non-governmental body, so it can't enforce the ISO standards. However, by contractual requirements or legal requirements, organizations may be required to present evidence of operating a compliant ISO system. But this is contractual or regulatory. For instance, if here in Europe we have quite a lot of finance helps for businesses. So to opt in, organizations are required to have a compliant ISO system being operated. This is because governments don't like giving money to businesses if businesses do not operate best practice ever. This is the reason. But it is not compulsory, it is not mandatory. However, your customers may request for your
Yep.
organization to operate it.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
I'll take the second one. How can I get certified? Well, I always, when I'm explaining this to a prospect or a potential customer, is I always say it's a two-step process. So the first step is they work with one of our assessors, starting with a gap analysis, and through that meeting, the gaps are actually identified by our assessor, and then our assessor starts filling in the gaps with the lead person. That's handling the quality department, like quality control manager, quality assurance. And then through that process, they're going to end up with a procedure manual. And with that procedure manual, the second step is they're going to have a certification audit that's going to certify them based on that procedure manual and their process at that moment during that certification audit. And I always say our assessors prep the client for that certification audit so they go into it confidently. So I always say it's not as daunting. The certification and implementation process is not as daunting as one might think. You know, when you're thinking of the unknown, just because you have not walked through it before, you think it might be kind of scary, time consuming. And I use that word daunting because it's like, oh my gosh, can I handle it? Can my people handle it? We have such a tough, heavy load right now of time and requirements. And I always say the benefits outweigh the disadvantages of not going with it and not moving forward with it.
Absolutely. And all our assessors, including myself, are IRCA certified, which means that we have learned and have taken our examinations with the International Register of Assessors and Lead Auditors. So actually, your assessors are experienced lead auditors on the system, which is quite a good thing to have as a support when you work with assessors.
Yes, Maria, and that's such a good point because our assessors will handhold the client through the process. It's not as if they're going to be on their own, like they get like a checklist of what to do, and they have to do everything themselves. It's not like that. And being able to have in this case, our ISO 9001 certified assessors, they know the process. They know what you're going to be audited on. They know the certification audit, what's going to take place at that time. So I always say that, once you get through it and then have the annual certification audits thereafter, it's a breeze. And being able to just and what I like saying this about IMSM, the company that we work for, Maria, is they're never going to have to worry about their certificate expiring like 5 years from now, and that they are the ones that have to pay attention to it, because once they're in the IMSM system, our scheduling department will contact them 30 to 45 days prior to their expiration date every year. So therefore, they're going to schedule that certification audit, and that through the QAS, our third party certification company. So they never have to worry, oh, is this going to expire? How am I going to stay on top of this? And I always say it's IMSM's job to stay on top of that for them.
Absolutely. And we've been doing it for nearly 30 years now. So we definitely do something quite okay.
Absolutely.
So, last question, shall I take it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. How long does the certification last for? So, the certification cycle is 3 years. When you are ready with your implementation, you invite the certification body and they do the certification audit. Next year, they recertify, which is a slightly lighter session. Same thing during the third year, and after that there is another 3-year cycle certification with a more exhaustive certification process starting. So it's a 3-year cycle to make sure that your company keeps the good work on, and everyone is on top of their roles and responsibilities. So this said, I don't think that there are any other questions. I can't see anything, can I? No.
I don't think so. I would just like to say we would love to hear from anybody who has any questions or would like a proposal or a quotation, or is interested in getting the ISO 9001 certification done. And right now is a pivotal and crucial time for companies that are interested in potentially having this completed by December 31st of the year 2022. So to be able to have this stamp that you are completely ISO 9001 certified on your stamp going into 2023, that's a wonderful thing. So we would love to hear from you now. Get in the IMSM queue to get started with the process. And we would love to hear from you. And visit our site, imsm.com, and contact us through there so we could be back in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pamela. It's a very good idea to have organizations starting now in order to meet 2023 with a fully operational ISO 9001 management system in place.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Caroline, marketing, can you please, guys, take now over?
Bye, Maria.
Bye.